This house, $3 million inheritance, and the position of the hospital's director will be inherited by my husband, the eldest son. When Rita heard that a lawyer was in my home for Tony's inheritance proceedings, she couldn't contain her excitement and brazenly marched into the living room. She had always been pressuring me, asking, "When will we get the inheritance?" and behaving insensitively. Rita had undoubtedly been waiting for this day for a long time. Seeing Rita approach the lawyer seated opposite me, the old me would have probably raised my voice and scolded her. But now, I was genuinely curious, even excited, about what audacious thing she might say to the lawyer. Her comment was so ridiculously greedy that I burst into laughter. The lawyer's shocked face made it even funnier, and I continued to laugh at her audacity. Of course, Rita didn't find it funny at all. "Do you really think you'll get your FIL's inheritance?" Rita's single-minded obsession with money made me snort with laughter. Douglas arrived later, and Rita, pointing at him, yelled, "My husband has inheritance rights." It was finally time for me to tell them the truth. My name is Kate. I'll be turning 65 this year. I've been a housewife and supported my husband, Tony, who worked tirelessly as a doctor for many years. Even after he became the director of the hospital, he continued to work actively as a doctor. We were blessed with a son who, inspired by Tony's dedication, also chose to be a doctor. I believe he'd led a fulfilling life. Sadly, Tony passed away at the age of 68. He was so dedicated that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was born to be a doctor. I sometimes wonder if his relentless work took a toll on his health, but at his funeral, it was clear that he had no regrets about the way he lived. There were many who mourned Tony's passing. The funeral was packed with his colleagues. Beyond that, many former patients also offered their condolences. My daily routine had often been simply watching Tony leave for work. Seeing how many people respected him made me realize that I had made the right choice to support him as a housewife. During the funeral, the only person visibly restless and inappropriate was my eldest son's wife, Rita. She had a smirk on her face, almost as if she was happy about Tony's passing. Confirming my suspicions, I overheard her making insensitive remarks among relatives. Tony was always so busy with work, wasn't he? I bet he didn't have time to spend his money and must have saved a lot. I couldn't believe my ears. Despite being in the middle of the funeral, Rita seemed excited, wondering how Tony's inheritance would be distributed. She might not even know that a DIL like her doesn't have inheritance rights, but more than that, her attitude was entirely inappropriate. Seeing my distress, my eldest son, Douglas, whispered an apology to me. "Mom, I'm sorry. I've spoken to Rita, but she doesn't listen." "It's not your fault, but if you feel that way, can you please talk to her again?" I was already aware of Rita's behavior before Douglas mentioned it. I look back, how intolerable she always had been. Even when I was busy preparing for the funeral, she came to my home but didn't offer any help. Instead, she only brought up the topic of money. She asked me how much inheritance did Tony leave. "It must be a lot, right? Please don't splurge all of Tony's inheritance even though you're his wife. Are you here just to say these things? Because it'll be a problem if you spend it all even though you don't have much time left." I was both angered and disgusted by Rita's audacity, treating Tony's assets as if they were her own. Furthermore, she looked down on me, constantly making snide remarks. I don't know when our relationship became this strained, but her obsession with money and entitlement left me dumbfounded time and time again. Douglas, who had married Rita, was also a doctor, just like his father. Douglas was by no means struggling financially, but Rita had always been overly fixated on money. She'd frequently call me, hinting at needing financial help, saying we're really tight on money or I'm worried about Douglas' unpredictable income, and we've always been at odds because of this. Now, with Rita trying to get the inheritance, my patience was wearing thin. Douglas' income is so unstable, we can't even enjoy some luxuries. Well, why don't you start working and contribute to the household? You expect a wife to work. You're so lucky, living comfortably thanks to your husband's earnings. No matter what I said, Rita's attitude only worsened, as if she was looking for a fight. She seemed to take joy in belittling her own husband, Douglas, just to mock me. I couldn't stand her selfishness and constant disrespectful attitude towards me. Well, I've indeed lived comfortably, thanks to my husband. Maybe you should try showing a little respect to your husband as well. I would if there was something to respect. Anyway, I have to go to a nail salon now. Please don't forget about the inheritance, okay? Having said all she wanted, Rita quickly left. I was concerned about how Douglas was treated at home due to Rita's tempestuous behavior. Yet, Rita's brazen attitude did not stop there. Even during the inheritance proceedings, she repeatedly did awful things. After the funeral, Rita often came to my home, repeatedly asking, "Is the inheritance ready yet?" like a broken record. No matter how many times I told her that proceedings take time, she kept me asking again and again. I once told her she had no authority, but she brushed it off as if it was nothing. I wasn't sure if she planned to take Douglas' share for herself or if she had another scheme in mind, but Rita was hell-bent on believing she'd get a huge sum. Perhaps she had made some deal with Douglas to get a share of the inheritance. Had that been it, I wouldn't have intervened. However, Rita's brazen behavior didn't stop there. She even tried to take valuable items from my home. "Hey, that's my necklace. Why are you wearing it?" "It's fine because we're family, right? Let's get along." I refused to get along with a thief. "Well then, consider this an advance on the inheritance. I've been patient waiting for you." No matter how much I scolded her for her actions, Rita wouldn't listen. Unable to bear her taking the necklace Tony had given me without permission, I decided not to let Rita in my home anymore. Douglas kept apologizing, saying, "I'm sorry for what Rita did." But he never stopped her, and I had little hope he ever would. With no time to mourn the loss of the gift from Tony, the harassment from Rita continued. Since I refused her coming to my home, she seemed to be bad-mouthing me to her friends, calling me a heartless mill who doesn't let me in her house. My kind neighbors, seeing the situation, would just give me sympathetic smiles, but I was left wondering, why must I be so hated? The last straw was a strange envelope in my mailbox. When I saw the already opened envelope, I felt uneasy. It was addressed to Rita. As a revenge for not letting her in my home, Rita had placed her credit card bill in my mailbox. The bill listed lavish dinners and a staggering amount from online shopping. I was shocked. "Hey, I found a credit card bill addressed to Rita in my mailbox. What's going on?" "I have no idea. Rita seems to be living quite luxuriously, doesn't she? She always talked about money issues, but can she afford this?" "Well, about that. I'm short of money right now. Could you, maybe, cover that for me?" I called Douglas to make him pay Rita's bill. But he made an outrageous request, leaving me speechless. He might have been influenced by Rita. Why would he assume I'd help them out? How could he ask such a thing when he can't even return the necklace his wife stole from his mother? His everyday selfish behavior was already concerning, but it seemed Douglas only remembered things that were convenient for him. "You know my support for you guys is over. At your age, how can you still burden your parents?" "Well, they's still Dad's inheritance, right? I think it's too much for you, so you can help us out." "You've got a nerve. You two are truly a match made in heaven. Just stay out of my life." His nonchalant attitude made my blood boil. I hung up and immediately trashed the bill. Did Rita really think I'd cover her bill? Just thinking about her audacity made my head spin. "Do you think they're actually trying to get the inheritance? What should I do, Tony?" I picked up a picture of Tony and asked out loud. My feelings toward Douglas and Rita were a jumble of anger, disappointment, and confusion. Would it be really okay to proceed with the inheritance? Amidst fleeting anxiety, I managed to muster up some courage. They'll get what's coming to them one day. Due to the insufferable behavior of them, I was pushing forward with the paperwork alone, harboring my resentment. My saving grace was the will that Tony left behind, which mentioned something crucial. Reading Tony's will, I decided to take revenge against them. "I knew it. You've always been on my side, Tony." Staring at the will, I regained my composure. I won't just roll over and let them have their way. I had decided to seize the opportunity and give a big payback to them. Feeling like I could finally retaliate, I totally forgot about the bill Rita had given me. I wasn't originally planning on doing anything about it, but whether she realized I had ignored it or not, I received a call from Rita. She kept making a false complaint that I say the inheritance process wasn't finished yet just because I want to keep everything for myself. You haven't given us the inheritance yet. I'll wait a bit longer, so please make sure to pay the bill I left in your mailbox. Don't be silly. Why do you think you're entitled to any money in the first place? Well, isn't it obvious? Douglas is the eldest son. Rita said, laughing, as if to mock my ignorance. Sure, being the eldest son, Douglas has inheritance rights. Generally speaking, that's true. But even after Rita had said all that, I still hadn't told them the most important thing. Even though they should know about it since it's their own business, they probably haven't even thought of it, being as self-centered as they are. I was eagerly awaiting the perfect moment to knock them down a peg. And that moment finally came. It was when I had explained the situation to the lawyer and asked him for help. After finalizing things with the lawyer, I contacted Douglas. As expected, Rita, overjoyed, came rushing over to my home. I purposely left the front door unlocked that day. Rita, without hesitation, opened the door and walked in. I had to hold back my laughter seeing her just walked in. Finally. I've been waiting forever. You've been holding back, not giving us the inheritance. Rita, why are you here exactly? Is this guy the lawyer? I'm Rita, Douglas's wife. Nice to meet you. Ignoring me, Rita hurriedly approached the lawyer who was sitting across from me. Normally, I'd be raising her voice in complaint, but I held back, waiting for Rita to speak. At this point, I was even excited to hear what Rita was going to say to the lawyer. This house, $3 million inheritance, and the position of the hospital's director will be inherited by my husband, the eldest son. Excuse me. Her comment was so ridiculously greedy that I burst into laughter. The lawyer's shocked face made it even funnier, and I continued to laugh at her audacity. Of course, Rita didn't find it funny at all. Why are you laughing? Are you jealous that we're getting the inheritance? $3 million. Where did you get that figure from? He's been a doctor his whole life, right? He must have had at least that much saved up. Don't tell me you've already spent it all. Rita, with her evident obsession with money, made me chuckle. It's my inheritance, I don't owe her any explanations. But it seemed Rita wasn't pleased with me having any money at all. I warned you, didn't I? To not spend all the money. It's pretty bold of you to say that to your mill. I've been warning you that you don't have any rights. Flaunting the necklace she stole from me, Rita glared at me as if blaming me for something. But I had no intentions of giving in anymore. I clenched my fists, ready to stand up against Rita, who was incredibly selfish and greedy. Douglas arrived later, and Rita, pointing at him, yelled, "My husband has inheritance rights." It was finally time for me to tell them the truth. You guys shouldn't expect any inheritance. Right, Douglas? Wait, what? Why? You don't remember? You can't be serious. You're still bringing that up. It's a done deal. What are you talking about? It's ridiculous to think it's a done deal without making any amends. What are you guys talking about? Rita seemed genuinely clueless, and I was astounded. She hadn't remembered what she had done. To remind her and Douglas, I began to explain everything to them. A few years back, Douglas married Rita, but just a little while ago, Douglas had been married to another woman. Moreover, despite having a child, Douglas paid no attention to his family and cheated with Rita, leading to their marriage. The shocking story came to light when Douglas, unable to pay alimony and child support to his ex-wife, asked Tony for help. I never thought you'd be this unreasonable. What were you thinking? I had no choice. It was the only way for me to marry Rita. You better make up for your betrayal on your own. I'm not giving you any money. Come on, you just need to help me a bit. You've been working as a doctor for ages, you must have saved a lot. Hearing those words, Tony's patience had long run out. Douglas started making excuses, saying that he is struggling with his new life and needing money for his seasoned wedding. Tony, deciding to prioritize his grandchild over his son, took a drastic step. Fine, I'll pay on your behalf. My grandchild shouldn't suffer because of a father like you. Why are you being so sarcastic? In return, don't ever expect any money from me again. And don't think you'll get a penny of my inheritance. At that time, Douglas seemed to underestimate Tony's words, thinking it was just a temporary declaration. But Tony didn't even attend his second wedding, saying, "Do you really think someone who abandoned their family deserves a celebration?" And refrained from giving any support thereafter. "Dad, come on. Remember, you'll need me to take care of you in the future. We're family. We need to help each other. I don't need you. Why would I want to be a burden to someone like you?" Knowing that Tony was wealthy, Douglas often demanded financial help even after that. But Tony never gave money, and even made it a point to include it in his will. The will clearly stated that the assets should go to me and his grandchild, the child of Douglas's ex-wife. Stern Tony ensured that not even a single cent would go to Douglas and Rita. I realized this when, during the funeral arrangements, Tony's lawyer showed me the will that Tony had entrusted to him. Recalling the anger from those days, I felt deep gratitude for what Tony had left me. So, as you've heard, Douglas has no rights to Tony's inheritance. Listening to the lawyer read out Tony's will, Douglas and Rita were flabbergasted. Adding insult to injury, I told Rita, "By the way, when you took things from my home, you thought it was like an advance on the inheritance, right? Well, as you've heard, you have no rights. You must return everything." With that, I pointed to the necklace she was wearing that day. Although she glared at me resentfully, with the lawyer present, she just clicked her tongue and threw it back at me. "I wasn't told about this. I came here today thinking I'd get the inheritance. Didn't you? I thought you knew all about it when you got engaged because you used to say things like you're much more attractive than Douglas's ex-wife." I remembered how Rita's attitude had once made my blood boil. I had thought my son had been deceived by such a woman, but now, it felt like they were a match made in heaven. "We're taking that inheritance. What about the hospital? Without an heir, who's going to run it?" "That's too bad. Tony already appointed his colleague as the director." "What? Isn't it supposed to be his child?" "Well, when you act out of the norm, you reap what you sow, right?" Rita was desperate for getting the inheritance, asking the lawyer, "Isn't there anything we can get?" However, the lawyer had no intention of divulging any information to Rita. He simply relayed the contents of the will, making it clear that the couple had no rights whatsoever. This is unbelievable. Something's definitely wrong here. If so, what are you gonna do? Will you sue me? If you want to add more embarrassment to yourself, go right ahead. It seemed Rita was deeply offended by how I handled the situation. With flushed cheeks, she stomped away with heavy footsteps. Soon after, Douglas followed her. After watching Douglas leave, I discreetly fist-pumped while holding a necklace. After that, Rita never reached out to me again, and everything was settled without a hitch. I was worried they might approach my grandchild, but Douglas, who didn't even have the decency to pay child support, likely wouldn't make any move. Thankfully, there didn't seem to be any problems. Now, Douglas and Rita seem to be in quite a dispute since they didn't inherit any inheritance. Rita even told Douglas, "I married you thinking I'd get a large inheritance." Apparently, they're on the brink of divorce. There's a saying, "Love lasts as long as money endures." It sure fits them well. I once got a call from Douglas demanding, "Give me the inheritance you got, or the house." Of course, there was no reason for me to comply. I said, "Cut the crap," and hung up immediately. It's disappointing how irresponsible my son has been, but recently, there was some good news. It was a letter from Douglas's ex-wife, informing me that the inheritance process was completed. Along with a picture of my grandchild, I received an update on the family, and a thank you note. She wrote, "My child is so lucky to have such wonderful grandparents. They seem to be living happily, Tony." The grandchild Tony always cared about seems to be growing up healthy and living happily with his new father. I was so delighted by the letter that I immediately read it aloud in front of Tony's picture. Even though I was quite disappointed in Douglas's behavior, I'm glad to share this good news with Tony about our grandchild.